Hello and welcome back to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here with us. We were absent for a little while. I need to apologize. Hold my hands up. We were away. Well, I was away. But now we're back reviewing right here the January transfer window. As we know, there were a lot of moves. Some of the guys are not too well known, so we'll do our due diligence right here to bring that info to you guys. But we had some big moves going on. We're going to start right here. Again, we're doing the tier list format that you guys seem to love. And straight to the point, Braden, we're going to start with Matai Akinmboni, a position that we so desperately need someone to step up. He made the move to Bournemouth. I think he was on trial at City, if I'm not mistaken. He ended up making the move to Bournemouth. Your thoughts on this one? Where would you grade it so far?
Yeah, it was actually his brother that was on trial at City. I include that as a little note. He's in the DC United Academy, so a cool thing there. And before we get into it, I just want to say as well, obviously there's a lot of transfers that happened in the window. We can't only talk about so many of them. So if you want to know our thoughts on any of the other ones that happened that maybe aren't as notable but still piqued your interest, definitely comment down below. We'll be happy to reply to each and every one of you and give our analysis. But getting into Akinmboni, I think there's a little bit of risk here because it's a huge jump in level going from DC United, where he wasn't playing too much, and even when he was playing, he wasn't necessarily setting the world alight. I thought he had a lot of struggles in the limited minutes he got. Going from that to a Premier League club with Bournemouth is a bit of a risk, but he's already been on the bench for their first team, and basically I think every game since he joined the club. Now, the one thing that is a little concerning is that he hasn't gotten any minutes yet. There have been defenders around his age and at the same position that have gotten minutes instead of him, but just spare parts minutes at the end of games, a couple of minutes here and there. And I will say the fact that he didn't get a loan move as well in the window is a little bit concerning to me, because I think that would have been better for him to be playing first team football at a lower level than sitting on the bench and not playing for the first team or even playing with U21s. But regardless, I think in the long term, this is a great move. I really like Bournemouth's project, what they're doing with the club. It's fantastic. They're in the European spots. I don't think anyone would have imagined that even going into the start of the year. So I'm a big fan of the move for the future. For this season, it's probably not going to amount to much, but overall, if we're looking at it as a transfer, I'd put it in the A tier personally.
That's interesting. I thought maybe I was being a little generous. I was going to put it on B. I completely understand it being A long term. Just looking at it as of now, I think I would grade it B. It could be even S tier in the long term. If you want to go with A, I completely get it as well. As always, guys, let us know in the comments below what you think as well. Ultimately, your guys' opinion is extremely important as well. We'll be responding to all of the comments, but we got to move on right here to Caleb Wiley. Now, this one, I saw some people in the past defending that he was doing all right. I don't think that was the case. Ultimately, I think it was a bit of a failed move. It was always going to be a big jump up from Atlanta, playing at a top 5 league. Now he made the move to Watford on loan. As we know, he signed a deadly deal with Chelsea, but this is a second loan already. Thoughts on this one? I think there's a player there to flourish. Do you think it will happen at Watford? How would you rank it as of now?
Yeah, I will say the Strasbourg one was a bit of a disappointment, but I don't think it's down to his play on the pitch. I mean, I don't think he was necessarily great, but it still wasn't like he was bad. I mean, he was still playing when available. He just had too many injury problems. Ultimately got recalled by Chelsea. Same with Slonina, by the way, who didn't get a loan move, which I thought was interesting. And if we were ranking that, it'd probably be down towards the F tier, which we don't even have here. So I guess people are going to have be a little bit spared here. But for Wiley, I think it makes sense. The fact that he is still injured is a bit of a bad thing for Watford, because they are still kind of in a promotion playoff battle. They're in 12th, but they're only 3 points off the playoffs, so it's still realistic that they could make a late season push up to those spots. And when he is healthy, I expect him to be the starter. The other left wing back that they have, he's also on loan, funnily enough, and he's been very, very bad for them this season, Laruzzi. So I think Wiley will be a locked-in starter once he's back. It's just a loan move, so it's nothing in terms of any sort of risk. I'll just put it a B. I think there's low risk, probably low reward, but it's the right spot for him, I think.
I completely agree. I was going to put him on B because I'm impressed that a club in the championship was willing to take him, and a club that does have a chance of maybe battling out for one of those spots for the playoffs. So Yeah, I agree. I think B is fair. Hopefully, gets to play a little bit more there. It was also very tough competition at Strasbourg, so hopefully, better things to come for him. We're going to move on to another left back. This one was overdue, let's say, and we're seeing that he's reaping the rewards already. John Tolkin making the move to the Bundesliga. A bit of controversy when he was announced on the comments because of his flat earth conspiracies, but regardless, we got to judge him by how he's doing on the pitch so far. How do you see this one? I'll just say it now. I think this is an S tier just because it was very, very overdue. I think that he needed to move on from MLS, and he found a club that he's getting minutes in the top 5 league.
I have a little bit of a different opinion here. I do think he's been solid, despite the scoreline. I think he showed flashes against Bayern, and I mean that was his first start for the club to be thrown to the fire like that. All things considered, I think he did okay. Also got an assist in their last match against Bochum, but ultimately in that match, the goals that they conceded cost them, and I'm gonna have to grade this a lot harsher. I think at the end of the season we'll see more of a clear ranking because this move is entirely dependent to me on whether they stay in the Bundesliga. Holstein Kiel, right now, it's not looking great for them. They're in 17th out of 18 teams. Granted, they are only 1 point behind Heidenheim in 16th, which would be the relegation playoff spot. But looking at how competitive the Zweite Bundesliga is, the second division, I think that even if they finish 16th, they'd probably still end up getting relegated. They're 5 points out of clear safety. I don't think they're going to get to that spot. And ultimately, I just don't think it's worth it to make the move later than he probably should have to a team that might be in the second division and probably has a good chance of being in the second division next year. So I'm actually going to put this at a C. I don't know if that's a little too harsh. If we meet in the middle, maybe it's a B again. We're putting so many players at B. I think we might need to move one or two of them. So ultimately, it'll be up to you. But I think that it wasn't exactly the right move. Although I am glad he's in Europe.
Yeah, just to try to defend my point on it being S, I would say maybe this is a hot take. I don't think he's going to stay there for long. I think that he's been looking very comfortable. Doesn't look like a guy that just got dropped from MLS into the Bundesliga. I will dare I say he just stay there until the summer and get a move then. And on that perspective, I think it would be S or A. We can go with C though because of his club situation. I don't think they'll stay up. I don't think they really have a chance either, which I think actually helps him. It's less pressure. Whatever he does, it's kind of a bonus. They're not going to judge him too harshly because of the teammates he has around him, and he's probably going to get a few goal contributions, which helps raise up his value. I think he's going to stay in a top 5 league for next season, regardless of his club going down. But that remains to be seen. If he stays with them, then it's definitely C or D. But moving on right here to the next one, also staying on the Bundesliga, I will say I was very surprised with this one. Lennard Maloney moving from Heidenheim. Maybe he foresaw what was going to happen. He had a crystal ball or something. Well, he was inside the club and he wasn't playing too well, but he made the move over. And now he's at Mainz. Thoughts on this one? It caught me by surprise. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think he's definitely taken a little bit of a step back as the whole club this season from last year, and I think part of that is due to the fact that they are in the Conference League. They're still in the Conference League, have been playing pretty well in that competition, although, as you can probably tell, their Bundesliga form has struggled. I do think this one has, again, a little bit of a mix for me here because on the one hand, Mainz really were pushing to get it done. They had an agreement to sign him on a free contract because his contract was expiring in the summer. They had that done, but they pushed and actually paid the transfer fee to Heidenheim to get the deal done now so they could have him for the rest of the season as well. Now, that being said, he hasn't played a single minute yet in the 3 games that he's been at the club, so a little bit of mixed signals there. I do think in the long run it is probably a good spot for him. The fact that the formation they play, I think it's good for him because they do play with the 6, they do play with 3 center backs. He is versatile in that sense that he can play in either of those positions, especially when it is a 3-back as a center back. I think that's what suits him the most if he were to play there. I think he's just going to be a solid rotational player for them, filling in, and they are 7th in the Bundesliga now. There's a very decent chance that they end up qualifying for Europe, and if they do, those extra games, they're going to need to rotate more. So for next season, it could be a good move. So for that reason, I'll be optimistic here and put it in A.
Interesting that we are disagreeing on these ones. I don't know. I see it on a more pessimistic side. I don't think he's going to be a starter there. I know that he's probably going to be a rotational player, but I don't know. I just don't think Maloney has what it takes to push to be a starter at a club like that. He'd just be a rotational guy, and at that point, I would rather him be a starter at a Heidenheim type of club. I don't know. Maybe it could be an A. Let's put it an A. I'm curious to see how people would grade it. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic. I've watched him quite a lot this season. I'm just not too impressed. Maybe it's just the form of the entire club. Hopefully he catches fire there and gets into the starting lineup at some point this season. But now moving on right here to James Sands. Extremely impressed that he made the move. He had the ambition to move over. It also caught me a little bit by surprise, but he made the move to St. Pauli. And as we know, he's a bit of a limited player, but I need to commend the guy for his courage making the move to the top 5 league. I'm really impressed with this, with him just making the move. Curious to see where you would grade this. Do you think it could pave the way for a long-term career in the European football?
Yeah, as you can see, I did a little bit of shuffling there to balance out the tier list. I think that makes sense. And for James Sands, I think this is a great move for him. Honestly, he's already jumped immediately into the starting lineup for St. Pauli in the midfield at the 6th position. He's helped them move up to be pretty safe. Yeah, they're in 14th, not that great in terms of positioning, but they're 7 points clear of the relegation playoff spot, 8 points clear of the official relegation spots. They're pretty comfortably a Bundesliga team now, I would say, and the fact that he's already jumped into such a big role for them and is playing pretty well, I think it is huge. And it is a loan deal. Hopefully they do activate a buy option or purchase him on a permanent deal from NYCFC, because if he is a consistent starter in the Bundesliga, yeah, there's a lot of depth at the 6th position for the USMNT, but maybe he enters the conversation. I think already you can make the argument that maybe he surpassed Maloney just based on the last month or so. Obviously, we'll need to see a little bit of a bigger sample size for the rest of the season, but I'm going to put it up in A, but I'd be willing to even hear S, because I think this transfer has worked out perfectly for him.
Yeah, I have to say S. The guy goes from New York City all the way to the Bundesliga, and surprisingly so, he plays well. He's playing well, and I think that's the most encouraging part. It's not as if it was just a gamble that maybe long-term he carves out a spot in the starting lineup. No, he's immediately having an impact. Pretty safe to say that they're going to stay up as well, so everything turned out perfectly. And like you said, the minutes, you could also make the argument that maybe by the end of the season you surpass even Tesman on the pecking order as well, just because of the minutes. Again, as a player, I don't rate him too much on the ball, but the guy has this much grit to make the move, and he'll probably improve, get up to pace with a high level. So yeah, I think S is fair to say, just because of the club that he left as well, and playing in Bundesliga. Props to him. A lot of players in MLS could take a note from him. So we're going to move on right here to a guy that has been plagued by injuries, sadly. It's Taylor Booth. I think a much needed transfer. I think you were one of the first ones in the community to point out that he needed a move, and here it is. He made the move, couldn't really stay. I think it was ultimately a leave or just rot on the bench for him at Utrecht. Sad to see, but he made the move to FC Twente. Do you think it could be a good partnership for the future? Do you think it's S, B, C? I'm curious to see where you think this would be for him.
Yeah, it's a weird one, because I think this kind of depends on where they play him, because I think we've all kind of come to the consensus now that he's not really a winger. I think long term he more projects into either an 8 or a 10, but maybe even a fullback position. That's what he initially was at Bayern's academy when he was coming up, a right back, and I think maybe long term he just doesn't have the skill set to play as advanced of a position, kind of like a Richie Ledesma, what you've seen him do this season at PSV. I think a similar path could be taken with Booth, and I think that'd be pretty beneficial for his career. If he is going to stay and play winger, the left wing position for them is pretty open, although usually he does play on the right, so I don't know about that. If he was to play the 10, their best player and one of the best players in the whole Eredivisie plays the 10 currently, so I don't know if from that aspect it would have been a good move. I will say, if they put him at right back, this is an A. The fact that he got out of Utrecht in general is a huge thing, because he had absolutely no future there. He wasn't even making the matchday squads at certain points. He went to a good, solid Eredivisie team instead of choosing the MLS option. He had a lot of offers from MLS, and the fact that he continued to stay in Europe and with a very solid team like Twente, who are 6th in the Eredivisie, are pretty regularly in Europe and are probably going to be there again next season. I think this is a great situation. They're still in the Europa League as well. They actually play Bodo Glimt today as the video comes out, so we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna put it in A. I think this is a pretty good situation for him, and considering the other offers he had, and I think this is the perfect destination.
For me, this one, I'm completely in the dark. I don't know. It's ultimately all up to him, but I still feel like there are a lot of question marks on whether this would be a successful one or not. But I will say I'll put it more on the upward side. So I think A is fair, based on where he was at his previous club. It was a desperate need for a move, and it happened. So if you want to put it in A, I think it's fair as well. But yeah, hopefully he hits the ground running. I mean, now the rumors to Man United look even more ridiculous than they did at the time when he was in the best form of his life. So we're going to move on to a guy that a lot of people forget that he exists these days, even though we are with an injury crisis at the 9. But we have Jordan Pefok. He made the move. He really does go under the radar these days. Moving to Stade de Reims, a place that was very kind to one of our American strikers in the past. Hopefully, it's the case with him. I don't know. I don't really watch Pefok too much these days. I feel like it's even unfair for me to grade him. And he's also having a few issues with injuries these days. Thoughts on this one, Braden?
Yeah, I'm just gonna give it a B. I think it's a nice homecoming for him. Stade Reims is where he grew up. That's where he came through the academy system. That's where he broke out. He had a 18 goal, 7 assist a season for them in Ligue 2 in 2017-18. That really put him on the map. And since then, his career has kind of fluctuated a little bit. Obviously, going to Stade Rennais, then Young Boys, Union Berlin. He's kind of been all over the place. This season has been, as we know, horrible. He didn't score a single goal for Union Berlin. But Stade de Reims do have problems at the striker position. I think he could help them, although it is very unfortunate. In his debut for the club, he came on at halftime and then made way in I think the 66th minute due to injury, and he's going to be out for a while. So it's just so unlucky for him. But in terms of a transfer overall, it's a homecoming for him. He gets to go back and help out in a position of need at a club where that's given him so much and that he's already given them. I think it's very low risk. Getting out of Union Berlin was probably for the best for both parties. Maybe this is a C just because it's kind of a meh transfer, but I think B or C, either one of those is fair.
Honestly, judging it as a transfer, purely on the transfer, not what happened on the debut, I think it could even be an A. I mean, it's a good move. It's the guy's going back to where he was made, really, as a player. But again, I don't know. Just Pefok doesn't really excite me these days. Hopefully, he gets better. It would be nice to have him on the USMNT picture again, because that would mean that he's playing really well since the floor and the ceiling has been raised. They both have been raised recently. And now we're going to move on to this one that we were puzzled on where to put, to the one that I think would be the biggest consensus here. I think this is the most shocking one for me, at least when it came out. Jack McGlynn somehow is going to be playing for Houston Dynamo. This is absolutely unbelievable. You can't really fault the Houston Dynamo for getting this. They're going to be replacing Herrera with a huge upgrade, huge upside as well for maybe a transfer fee in the future. I'm just shocked with this one. It has to be D. If there was an F there, I would put it an F. As a Philly fan, how do you see this one, Braden?
Yeah, this one obviously caught me by surprise when the news came out. Was really, really sad about it. Obviously, I mean, as a Philly fan, to send him somewhere within MLS and screw him over, to be completely honest. He was ready for the move to Europe. I know that for a fact. And I don't think he ever imagined he would have been making another move to MLS. There were offers from Europe, it's been reported, and offers that were close enough where, yeah, you get more money here. I get it. It was $2 million from the Dynamo plus a 50% sell on, which, yeah, I mean, it's going to be probably significant because he's going to ball out for Houston. He's already been balling out in preseason. He's going to have an incredible MLS season. Hopefully, get sold on to Europe within the next year or two for a huge profit for the Dynamo perspective. But just to screw over your player like that and their future and go against what they wanted, it's so uncharacteristic from Philly, because usually they do such a good job of sending their young players out to Europe, and we've seen it in the past. I'm just at a loss for words, really. It has to be a D. Should have been an F, but luckily for McGlynn, luckily for, I guess, the Union, there's no F on the tier list, so D. Horrible move. I know he's going to ball out in MLS, and I'm not worried in terms of that, but it's just really another season wasted of his career, to be honest.
Absolutely. It sets him back, I think, a couple of years, really. And he plays at a part of the pitch where we have a lot of depth. I don't know. This is really detrimental to the USMNT as well, not only to the player, because I think it's going to hinder his development as a player, and he's a very talented guy. So it's sad to see. I think it's one of the worst moves I've seen for a USMNT player. in recent years. It's absolutely shocking. Now, another guy that made the move to MLS, he wasn't there, but might as well say he was. Really, hadn't been playing well for quite a while. I think I made the shout for this one ever since San Diego FC got announced that they were going to be a club, and here he is, Luca de la Torre, making the move to San Diego FC. Not much to say. Some people really rated him because he was in the USMNT and playing La Liga. I didn't really rate him that highly. Curious to see where you would see this one, because I think you could see it both ways, a D or A. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it kind of just depends on what your expectations for Luca de la Torre were. From my perspective, at least, I would actually argue this was a good transfer for him, just because, I mean, we know he wasn't in the plans at Celta Vigo. He had that injury that kept him out for basically the entire first half of the season. He came back towards the end of it, got an assist in that Copa del Rey game against a fourth or fifth tier team, I can't remember which. Played 4 minutes in La Liga across 4 games, so realistically, he wasn't in the plans there. I think we all knew that. We knew that in the summer. He probably should have gotten a move then, but I guess the injury maybe complicated things a little bit. The fact that he's back to MLS, I think, all but says goodbye to his chances of being a USMNT player for the future. Never say never, but I think there's a lot of better options that are emerging now in Europe with the emergence of Gianluca Busio, Paxton Aronson this season, 2 players that, I mean, Busio already has taken his spot. Paxton is another one who hasn't gotten the call up yet, but is deserving of so, and is definitely ahead of Luca in the pecking order. If we're going to take that into consideration, and the fact that even if he did stay at Celta Vigo, or even if he stayed in Europe, he probably wouldn't have been a USMNT player, it makes sense. He goes back to his hometown of San Diego, a new, ambitious, exciting expansion team, gets to be one of the marquee players for them. I think from that aspect, it is a loan, so technically he could stay in Europe if he wanted to. I feel like it's probably going to become a permanent option. I would probably put it up towards higher, but if we're going to go about it from an aspect that we are a USMNT channel, we're looking at this from a USMNT perspective. His career for the USMNT is probably done because of the move. If you look at it from that perspective, it's probably a C.
I would make the argument that for him, it's kind of similar to the Tim Ring one, where even for the USMNT, I think it's a positive because realistically, come on, Luca was never going to be a game changer for the USMNT. Even at his best, I think he would barely make a spot for himself in the A roster. So I think that him being in the league with his experience, and he is a good player, it's probably going to raise the level. I don't know if that's the case, but I think it's it's good to have a guy like him with that experience and that quality in the league. So even for the USMNT, funnily enough, I think he contributes more being out of the USMNT rather than in, if that makes any sense. So I would still argue that it's a good move. I would maybe A, honestly. No one was watching him, caring about him at Celta Vigo. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think overall it probably pans out for the better for all sides involved, even the USMNT. Now, moving on to this guy, I hadn't heard about him in such a long time. Osundina making the move to Casa Pia. Hopefully he gets paid, because these smaller clubs in Portugal, they have a history. It's not just Reggie Kennan, but they have a history. But anyways, he made the move there, 20 years old. Do you think it's ever going to light fire, catch any spark? Where would you grade this one?
Yeah, I just don't really understand this transfer at all. I mean, he initially made the move to Feyenoord in the Eredivisie because they do have a connection with the USL club Orange County. He was playing there, playing pretty regularly with them a couple of years ago. Made the move. He got loaned out last season and for the first half of this season to their sister club in the Netherlands in the second division, Dordrecht. He had a decent season, 4 goals, 5 assists last year. He had 6 goals in the first half of the season this year. I thought he was making some pretty decent progress. I think it would have made a lot of sense to continue out there for the rest of the season on loan and then evaluate him in the summer. Maybe he's not Feyenoord level. I think that was probably never going to be the case. So maybe another loan to Dordrecht, maybe another move to a lower level Eredivisie side to cut short his loan and send him off to Portugal, to Casa Pia, who, yes, they're in Liga Portugal, the first division. They're actually playing very well. They're in 6th, which is interesting. I just don't think he's going to play, to be honest. I think if you look at the wingers and strikers that they have, those are the 2 positions that Korede Osundina plays. I don't think he's playing over them. Maybe a few bench minutes here and there. And I mean, when you add to the fact that players, American players in Portugal, have never really done well. I'm just puzzled by this. I think C or D is fair. I'd put it on the side of C because it's an upgrade in terms of the club, at least, which McGlynn's wasn't really. But overall, I'm just a little confused by this decision.
Yeah, I will say I see him more on the D side, really. I mean, so what are the odds that that move to Casapia helps his career? I'll just put it in D. But if you wanted to see, I completely understand as well. I don't want to be too pessimistic on the guy. He's still very young. Maybe something happens there, but I don't know. The odds aren't really looking up. Now, this next one, I'm very excited. It's Elijah Scott. If people aren't too familiar with his name, he's the guy that's basically a twin from from Stuttgart. He made the move. He was getting some bench options there, and then moves on to Lecce. They're 14th in Serie A, a pretty decent side, I will say. I mean, they're very boring, but I can see him getting minutes there. Ultimately, if he does play for the USMNT, I think it's great for all of us. He'll be playing in a top 5 league, in a league that's very famous for forming defenders as well, developing them. I see it as a really good move. Curious to see if you rank it as highly as I would do. I think it's A or S, since I think he will be getting minutes.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in A. He went from being a player who barely even played with Stuttgart's second team. He only had one appearance for them all season, to a guy who now at Lecce in Serie A is already making the bench for their first team. Now, granted, I don't know if he's gonna have much of an impact on the first team this season. He's probably gonna be playing with their U20s, but that's fine. I think he has a much more realistic path to the first team there. The twin of Henry Chase, as you said. Maybe he ends up being a better player. That would be nice. I'm going to put it up in A. I think it's similar to Akinmboni, but maybe even slightly better just because of the level of the club. It's a lot more realistic that he'll get game time. I think this transfer will really define how good of a player he actually is, and that's only going to be a good thing, as opposed to waiting until you're 20 or 21 like Chase at Stuttgart, and we still kind of don't know how good he is. I think this is really the best for all parties.
Absolutely, I agree. So yeah, we'll put it up there. I think it's completely fair. Now moving on to Gavin Beavers. He's making a move as well to Brøndby in the middle of, no, not the middle of nowhere. I don't want to be disrespectful, but going to be away from the spotlight. Thoughts on this one? Do you think it's detrimental or it's good because of the minutes and the experience?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna put this one in either C or D. I'll let you make the final judgment here, but in terms of the transfer, it just doesn't really make sense. He was battling it out for a starting spot at RSL. Now, would he have ultimately gotten it this season? I'm not sure, but he's making a move to a club that has in goal the Austrian number one. I just don't get it. I mean, yes, he's been playing for them in a couple mid-season friendlies because they have a substantial break in between the first and second half of their seasons, so that part's good. At least he's clearly their goalkeeper too. I just don't think for the long term that he's gonna get minutes right away, and he maybe could have done that with a different move. So I'm gonna put it towards the lower end. Yes, it's good that he's in Europe. I just think that this maybe wasn't the right move for that.
I will say maybe this is really harsh, but it's one of the dumbest moves I've ever seen. The guy could be a starter at RSL. I think maybe deservedly so. He could be even in 1-2 years as a goalkeeper. It's okay if you take a bit of time. You're going to Brøndby. You're going to be in the same spot that you were in MLS, and you're going to have to do a lot more to catch the eye to make a move. I mean, I think MLS is an exposure league. Really, it's better. I don't understand this one at all. I think a D. It's fair. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but I really don't get this, especially the rush since you're a goalkeeper. And we're going to close it out with a player that I've hyped for a while, Grayson Dettoni, making the move from Bayern. Now he's finally going to be playing. I think he's already gotten some first team minutes. Really excited about this one to FC Zurich. Thoughts on this one? Do you think, well, I don't think it's as high as an A as the other center backs here, but it's ultimately very nice to see a guy that's very promising coming from a really good academy that produced some good players for us in recent years, like Tillman. And thoughts, where would you rank this one?
Yeah, if you look at the B tier, I think they're transfers that are kind of incomplete and that we don't really know what to expect. I think Grayson Dettoni going on loan to Grasshopper Club, it makes the sense to be in the B tier as well. It's a loan move. I don't think it can really have much of a downside. Hopefully he plays a lot and gets a lot of first team football. That's what this move is for. It would be the first time in his career he gets first team minutes, and that's always a good thing. I think it'll really expose what kind of level he's at as well, because we haven't really been able to see much of his games with to the Bayern second team. So I think this is pretty low risk, somewhat high reward. I think B just makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree as well. And that would wrap it up for us. Thank you guys for watching this far into the video. Let us know in the comments below what you think about this tier list. Again, there were a few transfers that didn't make it into the video. Again, a lot of transfers happened, but I'm curious to see what you guys think about these. Let us know if you enjoy this type of content on the tier list as well. Give us ideas so we can make videos as well in the future as well. We'll be back to posting regularly. Thank you so much. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.